This week's theme is all about finding our freedom in forgiveness. Ah, I know that's big because forgiveness isn't easy. And it's just not. Because if you need to forgive something or someone, that means something has happened that's terrible, right? To you. It's like I can't forgive the unforgivable. And that's how our human speaks. It's unforgivable. How can I forgive that? Or maybe it's something we've done that we think is just terrible and we can't forgive ourselves, or we feel whatever we did is unforgivable. And so this keeps us trapped. It really does. It keeps us trapped in the human experience that there's no freedom. It keeps us trapped in our own prison. We're not our past. We're not our past. We don't have to be a prisoner to our choices, any choices that we've made. We can change. We can change. We can forgive ourselves for the past. We can forgive that unforgiven thing or things that we may have done. And so can others, right? Other people, don't hold other people in a prison of the past either for their choices. They can change. We have no control over whether they do or not, though. But what we do have control over, if somebody isn't, changing or seeing the error of their ways or apologizing or whatever it is, we can free ourselves from the control they have over us. That's what forgiveness does. It doesn't mean what they did was okay. What forgiveness does is it's a decision that we make to no longer be a victim of someone else's pain or somebody else's wounds or somebody else's sickness or somebody else's inability to change. It frees us, right? So free yourself with forgiveness. Forgiveness is for your benefit, for your inner peace, because you're kept again in that prison if you're going to just be stuck in the memory or the hurt or the pain of what somebody or something did to you or something that has happened to you. So what forgiveness does and why it's so freeing. And it's not easy. I'm going to say that again. It's not easy to forgive. It's a process. It's not just snap your fingers and I have forgiven all and now I am free. It is a process, something that you have to be willing to do. And what it requires, or why it's so freeing, is that it helps us to go beyond the story. It goes beyond the grip that somebody else's pain or somebody else's sickness or somebody else's control over us has. So we can let that go. It truly leads to freedom. It leads to happiness and it leads to joy. And the only way to forgive is to stop listening to your own wounded ego. We all have an ego, right? None of us want an ego, right? But we're all human. We have an ego and we have a soul, right? We have a heart, we have a mind, we have a body, right? The ego tends to live in the mind, right? Or an unaware ego does, one that is, all caught up in the story and all caught up in the unforgiven. It's wounded. Our ego's wounded. And so when we listen to that wounded ego, we're powerless. We're keeping ourselves in this prison, stuck there, unable to move beyond a story or move beyond somebody else's control over us. It's powerless. We're a victim of someone else. So the ego holds grudges, it just replays in the mind. You know what it is? Forgiveness requires some vulnerability. And that is any ego's worst fear. I don't want to be vulnerable. They'll hurt me again. And that's what plays. That's what the wounded ego, it just holds on to grudges. It's afraid to forgive, right? It doesn't feel safe. But what it's doing is keeping itself locked in the prison and in the victim role of being at the mercy of this person or the situation that just keeps hurting them. So we have to stop listening to that wounded ego. Embrace that wounded ego. Love that wounded ego. Just say, I see you. I hear you. I know this hurt. Okay. Feel your wounded ego. So the only way to forgive is to stop listening to the wounded ego and start listening to your soul. Right? The soul is the heart. It's that wise one within. It's where our power lies. The soul, any soul, can forgive and accept. And this requires, again, the ego can't do this, but the soul can, to trust the process. So we have to bring our ego, that wounded ego, into our heart and trust the progress of forgiveness, because it's not easy. So what this process is it requires us to feel our emotions, to feel the emotions. The ego doesn't like to do that. That mind it's scary. I don't want to feel my emotions, but not just feel them. We have to accept them. We have to feel our emotions. We have to accept our emotions. And that's the only way to release them. We can't release them. Releasing our emotions is something that just happens. Okay. What we do is we feel the emotions and we accept them. And the really interesting part of this is you don't just feel the negative emotions, although that's important, and you don't just accept the negative emotions. So if you're angry, if you're resentful, if you're scared or fearful, yes, you need to feel those emotions. You need to accept them. And in those two, feeling them and accepting them, again, you can't do that from the ego space because it's just the mind will just say, I'm out of here. I can't do this. It's too vulnerable. It's too scary. You have to do it from the soul space. You have to sit. This is a practice. It's a practice of forgiveness because we're in a human experience. You have to learn. You have to sit with your soul. You have to tune into your heart space. You have to clear the mind as best as you can from all the negativity. And then you feel the resentment, you feel the anger, you accept it. And in that, it's just released. Okay. We don't try to release it. What we do is feel and accept our emotions and it just releases. So the interesting part of this is it's also equally important to feel the positive emotions, right? When you're feeling happy, when you're feeling content, when you're feeling joyful, when you're feeling love, it's also important to really sit and feel those emotions and accept those emotions. And yes, we also have to release those emotions because it's interesting when we feel happiness or joy. It's like, ooh, we don't trust it, right? It's like, suffering has become glorified. And it's like, well, we can't be too happy, can we? Right? And so joy is even an emotion or happiness is an emotion that we tend to resist or the ego tends to resist. But when we feel it, we want to hold on to it, right? Oh, I don't want this feeling of joy to go. And then in that, you've lost it. So it's always about releasing the emotion, whether it's joy or happiness, or whether it's anger or sadness. Just learn to come into your heart and learn to sit with your soul, sit with your heart, and practice this. Practice feeling whatever emotion is coming up. But you have to accept that emotion. Don't go into story. Don't go into blame. Oh, I have this emotion because this person did this to me. Or I have this emotion because I did this. No blame, no shame, no guilt. That's all ego stuff. That's, again, why we have to stop listening to the wounded ego. It's powerless. It just keeps us stuck in a prison of he did, she did, I did, they did. It keeps us stuck in the prison of the story. That's not feeling your emotions or accepting them. So you got to learn how to sit in your soul. You got to learn how to feel, right? It's vulnerable, but the ego looks at vulnerability as a weakness when vulnerability is actually a strength. That's where we step into our power. Speak to anybody who's had major changes, like for the better in their life, there was always moments of vulnerability. You can't get to the other side You can't get to freedom. You can't get to expressing and feeling joy and happiness without there being, some vulnerability. The bigger the vulnerability, the better the payoff is. Okay, so we feel our emotions, all of them, the negative ones and the positive ones. We don't resist any emotion. That's what keeps us trapped, right? That by resisting an emotion, right? I don't want to feel this. It hurts too much. But it also, I don't want to feel this joy. But why? Because maybe it hurts too much when the joy goes away. And here's another one. And this is what I find sometimes because I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of practicing. I sit with my soul on a regular basis. I have worked through a lot of fear. It will still come up for me. You betcha, I'm human. But because I practice this, I can move through this. But what happens then is when I experience a lot of happiness and I experience a lot of joy, there's this belief, right? It's like, hmm, you know, can somebody be too happy? Right? Because if people, especially the wounded egos, go, you can't be too happy. They must be hiding something. Right? And so we got to claim our happiness and our joy as well. Again, suffering has been, it gets this, there is a badge to whoever suffers the most. No, 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 no. Right? Let's shift the way we look at things. There's nothing wrong with being happy. And you have to look at that, of course, right? Of course, there's nothing wrong with being happy. But what happens when you feel happy, right? Is it fleeting? Is it you're trying to hold on to it? Is like, oh, I'm not supposed to be happy because everybody else around me is not. Okay? That's what this is all about. So this week, the intention, you got to be willing to forgive. Right? You can't, again, there's some work behind it. It's not easy to do. And so when you're willing to forgive, you're willing to free yourself from the prison of what maybe somebody else's pain has put you in or you've put yourself in, or keeping yourself there under their control. Then, of course, you got to be willing to feel, accept your emotions and release. You have to be willing to practice that. And this is where our personal development group and membership comes in, because this is where we go this week is learning and cultivating this practice. Okay. And in that, we let go of being somebody else's victim. We also let go of our own past and our own, keeping ourselves in our own prison of what we think we've done. Okay. So this is also about forgiving ourselves and accepting ourselves. That's where we free ourselves. Okay. So it's a practice of listening to your soul. And fourth one, let yourself be happy. When you feel happiness, when you feel joy, maybe you're with some people and you're laughing, or you're with someone who just makes you laugh, or your heart smile. Really tune into that. Let yourself be happy, right? Right. Notice if you have that belief, there must be something wrong with being too happy. That's just not true. Okay. So that is our week. And you know what? I have a couple of minutes left. I've had some people go, how can you stop doing the tapping? So you know what? We're just going to move a little bit. I'm going to move a bit. You can come with me if you want. But really, this is just add a little bit of a bounce. And just as you move your body and you can do make some figure eights with your arm and you're moving your body. You can say, okay, am I willing to forgive? Am I willing to forgive? Am I willing to unlock the key to my prison and get out and from under somebody else's control, under their sickness, right? Just shake that out. I'm going to free myself. Yeah, I'm willing to forgive. It's a process. I know that's not going to be easy, but I'm willing to forgive and free myself. Okay. And then just merge it up and just touch the opposite side. Just touch the opposite side. Good. Yeah. And you can say that. I'm willing to forgive. That's what the day starts with. I'm willing to forgive. Okay. And then let's just rub our hands together and just tap underneath the eyes. And exhale. Just say, okay, I get that. I'm willing to feel my emotions. I'm willing to accept my emotions, the negative one and the positive ones. Right? We don't do the releasing. That just happens when we allow ourselves to feel our emotions and accept them. And then just come to the collarbone point right in there and go, I'm going to forgive myself. Also, I'm going to accept myself. And you know what? We have to also accept that somebody else is not going to give us that apology that we want. Forgiving someone has nothing to do with them. It frees us. Okay, so then tap into the thymus and just go, you know what? Yeah, I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate when I'm feeling vulnerable. I appreciate my wounded ego. How about that? But I'm no longer going to be a prisoner of the wounded ego. I'm just going to appreciate and love my wounded ego back into the heart. Yeah. And then here, metabolize that all in. Let yourself be happy. Let yourself be happy. Okay, so tune into your soul, tune into your heart. Listen to the whispers of your soul, and the more you practice it, it becomes your truth. Forgiveness becomes something that just happens. You feel it in every fiber of your being. Not easy, not an easy process, but if you trust the process and tune into your soul and be willing to forgive, you can find that. So that is this week's intention, my friends. Be willing to forgive. Namaste.